In 1938, Superman set the template for the modern superhero comic book. In 1978, Superman set the template for the modern comic book movie. Now, Superman was Warner's last hope to save not just DC on film, but the entire comic book movie genre. And yet, the entertainment media complex were rooting against it. So now, when it scored over $120 million in its domestic opening weekend, coming in higher than even the loftiest of predictions, then behind closed doors, they're like, "No!" We've already laid out why the entertainment media complex were rooting for the movie to fail, but now the Wall Street Journal have tacitly confirmed it as well. Let's see what they said. Warner can breathe a sigh of relief, for their gamble on Superman and James Gunn has, so far, paid off. Not only did the movie come in above expectations, but exit polls show the kind of audience reaction that tend to indicate legs, and the audience skewed younger. Stakes for Superman were so high though that even the Wall Street Journal did a story on it, titled, "Saving a Studio? This looks like a job for Superman." The logline, however, is underselling it, as it reads, "The Man of Steel is back in a new $225 million reboot. It's the last best hope for DC Comics to match the success of the Marvel Industrial Complex." But the Marvel Industrial Complex is no longer successful. Warner has to exceed what Marvel are now and get to where Marvel used to be 1 decade ago. That is the real challenge. The piece opens. It's a bird. It's a plane. It better be a hit movie. For the past quarter century, one Warner Brothers executive after another has promised they would finally make the studio's DC Comics brand soar. None of them succeeded. Each new strategy became mired in corporate politics and filmmaker egos that prevented DC's Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman from matching the big screen success of Marvel's Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Panther. Now, Warner Brothers is starting over, again. A Superman reboot opening this week marks the unveiling of a plan that executives and fans agree is the studio's last best hope to revitalize DC. But what does such revitalization look like? Again, I think they're underselling it, this time on Warner's behalf. Warner executives want Superman to gross more than $500 million globally, a fraction of the size of Marvel's billion-dollar blockbusters, but a hit by any other measure. I assure you, Warner executives are hoping for much more than that. That's a figure being put out there as a face-saving measure, I think. For Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, the internal threshold for success was $1 billion, though it needs to be noted that that was in 2013, when Hollywood was on a billion-dollar high, as 2 out of 3 Nolan Batman movies had just crossed that threshold. And Nolan had a lot of involvement with Man of Steel as well, while over at Marvel, the Avengers had just scored $1.5 billion, and Iron Man 3 crossed $1 billion as well, so expectations were high at this point in time. We live in a much different world now, where, as the Wall Street Journal points out, Superman doesn't have the financial demands placed upon it that Man of Steel did. But what it has to do is get the audience excited for more DC. The article continues. Chief Executive David Zaslav has frequently touted his repair plan for DC, while his company's stock price has lingered at less than half of where it started when Discovery and Warner merged 3 years ago. Zaslav has told Wall Street analysts that DC is one of the biggest value creation opportunities for us that could and should be a game changer. The company is preparing to spin off its cable networks, which will make the remaining Warner Brothers studio and HBO Max streaming service a dwarf in an entertainment industry dominated by giants like Netflix and Amazon. DC will be the slimmed-down company's most important wholly owned franchise and critical to its success or failure. So yeah, kind of a big deal that this works. And Zaslav has given Gunn a lot of power in the gamble that he can do this, given sufficient freedom, as the article states. The endless infighting for control of the superheroes is over. For the first time in Warner's history, an executive team is overseeing DC in all media, meaning they and the CEO who hired them have full responsibility for the brand's fate. In other words, quite a lot of responsibility, and Zaslav seems aware that such responsibility cannot be entrusted to a committee. Now is the time to go big or go home. The piece continues. Though Batman sells more comic books and merchandise, Superman is the world's most iconic comic book superhero and has always set the tone for how the public perceives DC. If Superman is working, the feeling from the audience is that DC overall is working, said Dan DiDio, who worked at DC Comics for 18 years as executive editor and then co-publisher. The article then goes through the career of James Gunn and Warner and DC's trouble to establish a working cinematic universe, because they didn't have anyone who could properly manage it. The article then confirms something we have previously reported on before as rumor. Warner executives met with Kevin Feige, the longtime president of Marvel Studios, to try to convince him to switch sides, according to people with knowledge of the matter. Those talks fizzled. Seeing how Feige has turned the MCU into the MCU and ran it into the ground, I would say they dodged a bullet, but instead they got Feige's secret weapon, namely James Gunn. Then the article shifts focus to David Zaslav, someone who is widely hated within Hollywood and among the entertainment media complex, which the Wall Street Journal isn't really part of, which may be why we're getting information here that the trades already knew but sat on. So, we are about to get a new example of why Zaslav is so hated in Hollywood, to the point where the media is stirring up division and controversy, driving false narratives just to harm the movie.
You said it's an immigrant story, it's a political movie. MAGA today is going nuts. What do you have to say to MAGA?
I don't have anything. I think this movie's for everybody. I don't have anything to say to anybody. Like, I'm not here to judge people, you know. I think this is a movie about kindness, and I think that's something everyone can relate to.
This was a completely and utterly made-up controversy, and as we said before, the trades were the ones driving this bullshit narrative just to stir up backlash. Now that the movie is out, and a lot of people have seen it, was there a reason for this backlash? Well, let's see what Ben Shapiro had to say.
Okay, so all the people who are getting super exercised over the politics, and we'll get to the politics a little bit later on. I think that they are overestimating how much politics is in this. I think they're deliberately misinterpreting some of the politics that are in there. This is not a movie about illegal immigration. It's not a movie about ICE, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, the Palestinians. There may be references there if you have politics on the brain, but other than that, I really don't think that there's that much of this there.
Yet, the Hollywood trades made everyone think the movie was hyper-political, with the admitted help of some cast members that hadn't received proper media training. But why would the Hollywood trades do this in the first place? Because they hate Zaslav that much, that's why. And the Wall Street Journal just gave us a new example of why. Around the same time in 2022, Zaslav was exploring how to fix DC. He dismissed as too woke a script being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates about a black Superman in the civil rights era, according to people familiar with the matter. This is something we have been reporting on for years. The J.J. Abrams produced Black Superman never happened because Zaslav killed it for being too woke. That's why Hollywood hates him. He was an outsider that came in and hijacked one of their major studios. And once there, he started undermining and working against the message they all agreed was what the world needed and the wave of the future, because they would make it so. Disney were best in class, while under Zaslav, Warner suddenly started skipping class. And while that isn't mentioned here, we've also reported how Zaslav took one look at Batgirl, the movie which was supposed to usher in the DCU, and he killed that too. While it was filming no less, he just scrapped it alongside all of his predecessor Ansarnov's plans for a safer, more representative and inclusive DC universe. And then he fired Sarnoff, Hollywood royalty and the Kathleen Kennedy of Warner. The true leaders of Hollywood will never forgive him for that. The article then goes through how Zaslav got convinced that Gunn and Safran were the right ones for the job of rescuing DC, and how he in turn convinced them to take it on, giving them all power over all facets of DC live action and animation. So the brand has one cohesive structure and strategy. As for that strategy, the article continues. Gunn and Safran are targeting 1 animated and 2 live-action films a year, as well as TV shows that will primarily stream on HBO Max. They aim to eventually re-establish all the company's best-known characters, including Batman and Wonder Woman, and unite them in a new Justice League film. Before the piece concludes, Marvel Studios has fallen on hard times recently with a string of flops, including May's Thunderbolts. If Superman outgrosses that film and Marvel's upcoming The Fantastic Four First Steps, this would be the first year that DC bests Marvel at the box office since 2008. And that right there is a testament to how shockingly bad, bland, and forgettable Captain America Brave New World was. Because the Wall Street Journal just flat out forgot it existed. But it does, sadly. And it came out this year, so Superman would actually have to outgross Fantastic Four First Steps, Thunderbolts, and Brave New World in order to beat Marvel at the box office this year. Chances of that happening are slim, but not quite none. We'll know more next week. But in the event that one DC movie does end up doing that, outgross 3 MCU movies, that would rock the industry to its core, the same way the original Avengers did back in 2012. We'll keep you up to date on how this develops as we learn more, so to make sure you don't miss out on that, please smash that like, help share this video, so more can see why Hollywood secretly wants Superman to fail. So please subscribe if you haven't done so already to make sure you don't miss out on future updates. For now, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.